All right. So, been waiting to make this video for a minute, and it's not about gold. This is going to be about baseball and whatever else in sports world's on my mind. The exact moment that the words start flowing out of my mouth, and we're going to talk a little MMA slash wrestling. So, it's been a while. Just want to say I've been extremely busy with work and other things. So I'm going to try to be a little bit more consistent here, as this is a great outlet for me. This video should piss some people off, and that's fine because, hell, I'm pissed off. So might as well piss other people off with me. Misery loves company, right? Well, anyway, let me just get right to it. What you're looking at on the screen is a bunch of garbage surrounding a baseball. And that's pretty much how I feel about Major League Baseball right now. The sport, which is pure, with that ball, is surrounded by a bunch of trash, which is analytics. And let me explain to you why I believe that statistics are fine, but analytics are being overused. Analytics are a self-fulfilling prophecy. And what I mean by that is, analytics in all sports have become a self-fulfilling prophecy, but baseball, it's pretty easy to see. It's easy measurable. So here's how I'll break it out. If you're a kid learning how to swing a baseball bat, the hardest thing to do in sports is to hit the round ball with the round bat. It's physics. So what you're taught as a child is you're taught that it's like chopping wood, right? That you want to have a motion where the bat comes off above your shoulder, comes down through the strike zone, makes level contact so that you can square up with the ball, and then you drive through it. And typically a natural swing will have a slight uppercut. Slight. What's being taught now is this concept of the three true outcomes, which is that there are three true outcomes in baseball. There is a walk, there is a strikeout, and there is a home run. The issue is that the walk, yeah, I think a walk is an outcome. I don't believe in true outcomes, but a walk is an outcome. A strikeout is also an outcome, but a strikeout is an outcome just like a pop-up. The difference is a pop-up has the potential, much more so than a strikeout, to create movement on the base paths via an error. Now, a strikeout can also create that if a pitch is not caught by the catcher on strike three and the runner has a chance to get down the first baseline. But for the most part, a strikeout creates no movement. A strikeout does nothing. A strikeout just simply sends the batter back to from wilt he has coming. But, in analytics, it's considered a true outcome because it is an acceptable risk and an acceptable result via the risk of trying to hit the home run. Which gets me to the last true outcome, the home run. The belief that the home run as a hit, it's better to hit 230 or to hit 220. The major league batting average across baseball is about 246 right now. That's terrible. It's one of the lowest in recorded modern baseball history. But the idea is that we've created a generation of hitters who are taught that it's better to hit for a 220 average, but to hit for power, because hitting a home run every 22% of the time, let's say, which it's not realistic that anybody who hits 220 is hitting a home run for every hit. But they believe that hitting 25 to 30 home runs over 162 games, or let's call realistically, because people miss games, let's say 150 games, that's better than hitting 280 with maybe 15 to 20 home runs or even less, but making more contact, getting more singles, doubles, and dare I say triples, right? So the perfect example of the modern baseball hitter would be a Joey Gallo. He's going to lead the league in strikeouts, he's going to hit 40 home runs, and he's going to lead the league in walks, or be up there in walks. That's considered good. That's considered worth a lot of money. Same thing with Giancarlo Stanton. The guy's never been a 300 hitter, which is fine, but the idea is that he has special power. So a guy like him who can hit 55 home runs, you could forgive. But when you have players coming up who are not at their best going to even hit you 15, 20 homers, but they believe that having an uppercut swing is what the scouts want to see, because occasionally they'll walk into a home run, and that striking out and walking is the true outcomes of Major League Baseball, then we have a severe problem. perfect example of why the three true outcomes are trash is my favorite team, the New York Mets. The New York Mets have a lineup of guys who make a ton of contact. They get on the base paths. They run the bases well. They steal bases. They take extra bases. They do everything anti-analytic. They are not the most talented team in Major League Baseball. They are not. But they're one of the few variant teams in the sport, and they have the best record. And the reason why is because every night they're going to be in the game. Because they pitch, because they field well, and that's the other thing. Your fielding will improve if you don't put your team together based on the three true outcomes. Because if you're accounting for your hits based on home runs, and a guy who walks could be a Joey Gallo type who's a power hitter, then the odds are you are not going to be able to fill up the field with 9 true defensive players. The Mets don't do that. So if you look at their outfield, Starling Marte, Brandon Nimmo, Mark Canha. Of course, they rotate. Sometimes you'll put a McNeil out there. Giancarlo off the bench when he's healthy. The kid they brought up, Nick Plummer. Everybody's capable of fielding their position and fielding it at a plus. Same thing goes with the guys on the infield. Escobar's not hitting well, but he fields his position very well. Lindor's always been a good fielder. McNeil's actually a pretty good second baseman. And Alonso is about average at first base, but he's gotten better every single year. So what you see in front of you is a team that makes a ton of contact, they run the bases well, take extra bases, they field their position very well, and it keeps them in every game. The exact opposite of them is the Philadelphia Phillies. Now, yes, the Mets and the Phillies have different pitching staffs, no doubt. But the Mets have injuries to their top pitchers, and they're able to still to win consistently. The Phillies are an analytic team. They're a home run or nothing. They don't run the bases well. They're terrible defensively. They pitch okay on their good days, but they have a lousy pen, and they absolutely cannot do anything other than slug the ball. The problem is that's not baseball. It's not called home ball. It's called baseball. The idea is you advance the bases. So if you're not going to build a team based on the ability to advance bases, then how are you going to win in a game called baseball? Well, the end result is you're not. The teams that have consistently won in the past 5 or 6 years, meaning the Dodgers and the Astros, even the Nationals when they won the World Series, they were not heavily home run hitting teams, and that was all they did. Did they have power? Absolutely. But they also had a lot of speed, they fielded their positions well, and of course they pitched. That's what you need to win. This idea of all these statistics clouding the minds of young hitters, even at the high school and middle school level, is insane. They're a nerd who sits at his desk and looks at a spreadsheet, who's never played sports, is going to come up with the concept of the three true outcomes. But somebody who's ever played the game and can also read and write can easily refute that concept. The reason I say that this is a self-fulfilling prophecy is simple. If you have an uppercut swing, then most of the time when you make contact, you're going to pop the ball up, or you're going to make weak contact and roll it over. You're probably not going to score up a lot of balls. So inevitably, the only success you will have will be via the home run, and you're going to strike out a lot. So then what happens is that statistically, the guys who get paid the most are going to be the guys who hit the most home runs, because if there's a lineup of 9 guys, and all of them are having an uppercut swing to try to please the analytics department, what happens is the guy who hits 35 home runs gets the big contract. The guy who hits 15 or home runs gets a lesser contract. The guy who hits 200 with 5 home runs gets the least amount of money. But the guy who hits 200 with 5 home runs, like a Jeff McNeil, he's capable of hitting 300 with a little less power, but he actually might even hit for more power if he makes a lot of contact, because he's going to hit line drives. And line drive balls do get out of the ballpark. So what happens is you're taking hitters who may have the talent to hit at a higher level, and you're bringing them down because you're saying that we're only going to pay the people we value. We only value the people who produce, and the only production in the lineup are the guys with the most home runs. But the guys who hit the most home runs are not truly the best hitters in the lineup, because you're reducing the other people's abilities and skills. That's a huge factor. The solution? This is actually pretty easy. besides the idea that you need to get rid of the shifts, which I'm okay with, the biggest thing you got to do is you have to teach people at a young age to have a level swing, because then they have more bat control. When you have bat control and you shift, they can hit the ball against the shift. When you have bat control, you can hit the ball inside, outside, up, and down. There won't be a quadrant of the strike zone like you have with the uppercut hitters, where pitchers just throw hard and high, and the guys with the huge uppercuts can't touch it. That's just something that's been sticking in my craw. The way that the Mets play the game is exactly how a team should be playing. I never thought I'd say that. But you got to give credit to the organization, top to bottom, for changing their philosophy, getting back to old school kind of baseball. It's hard-nosed. It's a lot like Whitey Ball with the Cardinals of the 80s, the Cardinal way. It's an aggressive, old school style of baseball, but it's predicated on something very simple. You protect the bases and you take the bases. You don't play home ball. You play baseball. Now I'm going to get on to another topic, something that's top of mind for me, as always. You know, I'm a huge pro wrestling fan, and I've really gotten into MMA of late. I'm excited for tomorrow's fight night card. It's always good, you know, watch a little UFC. I like Bellator. I catch MMA on the Fight Channel on Pluto. Shout out to Pluto TV. They do a great job with their Bellator channel, but also with the their Fight Channel that has stuff like Fighting Spirit MMA and King of the Cage, their promotion. I'm really surprised UFC hasn't jumped in and put a UFC channel up on Pluto, but you know that might be due to contractual reasons with ESPN. Nonetheless, you know, I've really gotten into MMA. To me, MMA is dwarfing wrestling as far as popularity and consistency goes. But you know, one thing that came up this week, which I found interesting, was on Sunday, it was on Sunday, the Double or Nothing pay-per-view. You know, MJF, there were rumors that he was going to fly home and not participate in the pay-per-view. He skipped the Fan Fest event. And then, of course, he cut the amazing pipe bomb promo on Wednesday. Let me explain a couple things as to why that promo was solid. And why I also believe that, yes, it might have hurt the company in some respects. But here's why I think they had to take the chance. Number one, MJF is the best wrestler on the microphone today. I don't want to hear about him in The Miz, okay? It's really simple. I don't want to hear about him in The Miz. Let me explain to you why The Miz and MJF don't compare. MJF is a pro wrestler, right? MJF is a guy who came up from the minor leagues in Major League Wrestling, you know, independent scene, Major League Wrestling, then got to AEW. MJF is a wizard on the mic, and he's allowed that freedom. I will grant you, The Miz is probably not allowed to cut promos as he wants. But The Miz has taken on a role, basically since he got there, as being a half heel, half clown. He has never been a guy that you take too seriously. Even in his main event at WrestleMania, he wasn't the main event. The Rock was. So overall, I don't think you can compare The Miz and MJF. If you want to compare them in 2022, it's not even close. I have no bias against WWE or AEW, but if you're going to tell me that MJF isn't up to The Miz's level, then you're on something. The Miz, when he's on television, cuts goofy promos. When he works with people outside the company, he's goofy. The guy is a clown. He's comedic relief. Is he funny? Yeah, I guess he's funny. You know? Is he good on the mic? Yes, absolutely. But his character isn't meant to be taken seriously. MJF makes you feel a certain kind of way. He's an old school wrestling promo where he can really get you angry and he can really make you get connected to him. The promo that he cut on CM Punk, where he talked about how Punk was his hero to bait him in. Did you know he was going to hit him and low blow him? Probably. But were you still sucked in by his words? Absolutely. The promo he cut on Tony Khan the other day was masterful. Best promo I've heard since the pipe bomb with CM Punk. And to be, to be fair, the past 10, 12 years, there hasn't been a lot to write home from about wrestling in general, but especially on the mic. With all due respect to the Chris Jerichos of the world, John Cena's, and Roman Reigns, none of you could touch MJF on the mic, and certainly could not touch the promo that he cut the other day. The reason why that was so dynamic is a couple of things. Number one, he did harken you back to Brian Pillman 1996 WCW. For those who don't know about that, please don't make fun of WCW if you don't really know what it is. Too many clowns online who mock WCW, but you never watched it. You have no idea what you're talking about. WCW, just to summarize why WCW was a great promotion that should be still around today. Very simply put, WCW was sold to the WWE for a few $1,000,000. WCW had a bid in for over $35 million by Fusett Media, which Eric Bischoff was a part of. There's no reason legally, and the SEC should have looked into this, that WCW would have been sold by Time Warner to the WWE instead of being sold, or at least being considered a sale to Fusett Media for over $30 million. There was something going on there. I'm not going to accuse anybody of anything and risk a defamation suit, but all I'll say is, if you think that was on the up and up, then there's something wrong with you. The idea that a business would be sold for 10 times less than what the offer was from Eric Bischoff's group is insane. So anyway, WCW, people make fun of how it went out of business, which I also don't understand why that's funny. Some of the best wrestlers that have ever walked through WWE all came from WCW. The Undertaker, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Triple H, obviously even Kevin Nash, because he was in WCW before he was in the WWF. There's a lot of guys who came in from WCW before the Eric Bischoff era and after. So this concept that they weren't a good promotion is crazy. Okay. So anyway, the point is, yes, the Pillman promos in 1996. There's a great comparison between that and MJF. MJF's promo was spectacular because one, he took his time building on it. It was a 9-minute promo, and I read that it wasn't supposed to be that long, but I'm glad it was. Number two, he turned the crowd. And I know people are going to say, well, it's bad for business that he did that because it makes the company seem weak, like the way Meltzer made this comment that WCW became almost a joke to the NWO because people started liking the NWO. I would argue this. Did they make the NWO too powerful? Did they win too many matches? Maybe I could argue yes. That might have hurt WCW. But the concept that the NWO strength made WCW weak just on that relationship alone, I'm not sure. I think psychologically they booked the NWO so powerfully that it ruined WCW's status until Goldberg. But with regard to AEW, this is about one wrestler who the fans deep down really do want to like because he's so clever on the microphone that I don't think you can help but cheer him when he cuts a promo and talks about something like ex-WWE guys getting too much time. And by the way, that's a commentary that they had to know was low-hanging fruit for the fans to cheer MJF about because let's be honest, it's true. AEW signs too many ex-WWE guys, not because they're signing them and they're coming in, but because if you watch, and I don't anymore, but if you watch AEW Dark Elevation, YouTube Elevation 4, Elevated YouTube, and YouTube Elevated 5, then you'll know AEW has way too many wrestlers on their roster, and they have too many guys, and it's nothing against the wrestlers because I'm glad they're making money, but they have way too many guys because they can't fit them on TV. So they can work on the YouTube channels, but they don't get a chance to work on television because there's not enough time in the day. There's not enough time for the guys on YouTube to get on television. Tony Khan is a rookie booker, and he does some good things and he does some bad things, just like everybody else. But the one thing that he's been doing consistently wrong is he's got young talent that you're not familiar with, and he's overdoing the ex-WWE guys, but he's not just overdoing them. He buys them, puts them on TV for 2 weeks, and then sends them to YouTube. Even the ex-Ring of Honor guys. I mean, Jay Lethal rarely has a match on television. Jay Lethal should be on Dynamite. He should be on the Friday Night Show, Rampage, which is on tonight. It's not a matter of me cheering for individual guys. It's a matter of you have a roster. If you want to develop stars, if you want to develop a rhythm with your program, if you want to establish who you are, who your identity is, then you have to have consistency on your television. That's something that they don't have. They have Wardlow as a guy who got his spot mainly because Cody Rhodes left, so there was room for him to move up. But you got to wonder, is Wardlow going to be continued to book as a guy who has short matches? Because even though I think it's cool to have the Goldberg effect, one good point that was made by Meltzer is Wardlow at this point is more Goldberg year 2 and 3 than year 1. He can't afford to just come out and do squash match after squash match. You got to do something more interesting with him now that he's separated from MJF. But that's where, if I were the company, I'm either having him fight a legend, or I'm going to have him deal with some kids from AEW Dark, where they're basically cutting a promo on Wardlow saying he doesn't deserve a spot. But you have to have consistency to be able to do that. The only guy who's a true no-name who gets consistent looks on AEW Dynamite is Daniel Garcia. Now, I don't know how much money Tony Khan owes Daniel Garcia, or which dog Tony Khan ran over, but he must love Danny Garcia, because this guy gets way too much time on television. I mean, he's a no promo, he's a very skinny guy, and he gets to come on TV pretty much every freaking week and have a match. I don't know why. But nonetheless, MJF's promo cut to the teeth of what some fans feel about the product, so that was low-hanging fruit. But MJF is so good on the mic, he can't help but get chewed. So either take him off the microphone or let him do his thing and see how the fans react. Now, I think at the end of the day, the fans are going to boo him if his reaction to the company is, I'm not going to come here anymore. So they'll get a heel out of him. He's a natural heel. They don't have to worry about, they're going to like him too much. They're going to cheer some things he does. They cheered Triple H when he was a bad guy at times. You're going to cheer The Rock when he was a bad guy. All you have to do is turn to the fans and say, if I wanted your opinion, I'd pick it out of your ears or something. You know, I mean, like, it's easy for MJF to turn back on the fans. But the guy has got so much skill above and beyond the other people in the industry on the microphone that it's going to happen. He's going to be cheered. It's going to happen. AEW needs more consistency with their roster so that if this is going to end up being an MJF departure, not now, obviously, because they're working, but in a year and a half, they have to have a backup plan. Because one thing Tony Khan can't afford to be is a feeder for WWE. That's what WWE would love. They don't fear AEW because they do what they want to do, WWE. But AEW has to be careful. You know, Cody Rhodes left, and it looks like greener pastures for him. Now, it's not going to be that way for everybody. But an MJF goes, and if he's doing well, you don't want the thing to be come to AEW so you can go to WWE. So that's something they have to be mindful of. Overall, my last complaint here is very simple. The fans of wrestling, you guys make this thing unbearable. I'm going to tell you why. The WWE stands who cannot stand AEW, stop watching it. The AEW stands who have such a problem with Vince McMahon and the booking because there's not enough ninjas doing cartwheels every match, stop watching WWE. Okay? Get over yourselves. Both sides are ridiculous. It's like the Democrats and the Republicans. It's watching two sides have fake fights about nothing. And meanwhile, this country still goes to shit. And that's the same thing that's happening with these two. You got fans on both sides who are complaining about the other product. Nobody's forcing them to watch. Don't watch it if you don't like it. But there's good about both sides. And as far as wrestling and MMA goes, let me just explain to you. The first thing that makes MMA better than wrestling today is the fact that the fans are better. These are the fans who used to like wrestling 20 years ago. These are the fans who actually played sports. These are the fans who appreciate competition and actually have a liking for the violence, whereas wrestling fans today seem to just like the goofy side of it. It's like they would prefer in the middle of a match for a wrestler to stop and hug the fans and talk about how they love their opponent rather than be serious. The element that The Undertaker mentioned which is missing, the toughness, the grittiness, it's very much true. It is missing. It's missing in everyone, including CM Punk, including Roman Reigns. Okay? It's missing in all of wrestling. And that's why wrestling takes a backseat to MMA right now. MMA has a natural, gritty, tough element that cannot be duplicated by pro wrestling. Not even close. MMA is the truth. It doesn't take a lot. And the more that they borrow from wrestling with regard to the introductions, the promos, the face-offs, all that stuff. The more they borrow, the more they're going to dwarf the sport or the work of professional wrestling. MMA doesn't need the stars. I saw an interview with Steve Austin and some other guy whose name I'm totally forgetting about MMA and how, one thing that they have to do is build up new stars. My argument for them is it's like football. It's like basketball. It's like hockey, baseball. When you have real sports, stars can be made through the game. In pro wrestling, stars are never made through the wrestling. There are 100 guys out there that can do a lot of great suplexes and a lot of super kicks and dives. It doesn't make them stars. It doesn't mean the average person would pay $60 to watch them. But in MMA, if a big guy or a little guy wins 4 or 5 fights, he's knocking people out, he becomes a star. That's the difference. In MMA, success breeds stardom, just like in basketball. If the Warriors didn't win 3 championships, they wouldn't be considered stars. If LeBron James didn't win, in any games on his own, when he was with the Cavs, would he have been a star by the time he went to the Heat? Did the NBA back him? 100%. Did the NBA back Michael Jordan? 100%. But they back people based on talent. Okay? They back people based on performance and measures. Wrestling, you don't have that. People talk about work rate. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. That's the dumbest thing. We're talking about an entertainment form where somebody behind a curtain tells another guy to lay down for another guy. Okay? At the end of the day, it has nothing to do with who's better or who's not. So for all the wrestlers out there who talk shit about MMA or even other wrestlers that want to get tough and bow up, let me just remind you, you only win because somebody else tells you that the other guy's going to lay down for you. Nobody wins by legitimacy. It's not real. So in MMA, unlike in wrestling, where a bunch of people can argue online about who should get the push, who should not get the push, and all this trash that really ruins the forum, okay? In MMA, it's not about who gets the push. If you're kicking ass, you're going to be shown. If you're not, you're not. It's winning and it's losing. Are there controversies? Of course. Of course there are. Every sport has them. But in MMA, these guys legitimately win, they legitimately lose, so therefore they create their own star power. And that's why MMA is here to stay and pro wrestling is fledgling. Because what's going to happen is when a guy like Roman Reigns goes to Hollywood and a guy like Cody Rhodes does the same, who's going to be the next big star? Well, you got Braun Breaker, but it takes 2 to tango. And in reality, it takes like 5 to carry a company. Because you need 2 top stars, you need guys underneath those top stars, you need a rotation so that things stay fresh. Okay? Rock, Stone Cold, Triple H, Undertaker, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels. Like, you always have to have a rotation of guys at the top. You can't have one guy leading the company. You can't have one guy who people know. And by the way, walk down the street and ask people who's CM Punk, who's Roman Reigns. They don't know who the hell these people are. They have no idea. Ask who Conor McGregor is. Everybody knows who that is. Everybody knows who that is. Okay? If you ask the average sports fan who John Jones is, most people know who that is too. So you gotta take a step back. You gotta take a step back. And you gotta start thinking to yourself, is there really a comparison between the two in 2022? I don't think there is right now. And I love wrestling, but there's no way for me to sit here and tell you that wrestling is on par with MMA right now. It's not. And a lot of that has to do with the fans, and a lot of that has to do with the simple fact that the 2 companies in pro wrestling are struggling to create stars, whereas MMA doesn't have to worry about that. And I know it sounds crazy because it's like, oh, come on, they don't have stars. Colby Covington is a star when he has his fights. Okay? He's a star. He's good on the mic. Okay, there's a lot of guys at MMA who know what they're freaking doing. And winning and not saying a damn word in MMA draws star power because it adds an era of mystique. In pro wrestling, you have that to a degree, but remember, in pro wrestling, you have a match. Let's say you have 3 matches off television and 1 or 2 a week on television. Okay? So fans will turn on you if you win 100 in a row. They won't accept that kind of build-up. But if you were an MMA fighter and you won 10 fights in a row across 2 years, fans would be fucking loving you. They would be looking for your t-shirts, looking for your hats, your sneakers. And 10 is probably a bit much. Right, probably like 10 over 3 years, right? You'd be a superstar. You'd be considered the best. There's just no comparison. And I'll be honest with you, right now, Dana White is probably a better promoter than Vince McMahon. And I think Vince is great. But Dana White has probably surpassed him as the #1 promoter in America. And then, after that, let the chips fall from there. But anyway, that's my rant tonight on pro wrestling, MMA, analytics, the Mets. We'll see what happens with the Rangers and the Rangers and the Tampa Bay Lightning. I wonder if they can make the Stanley Cup. It looks like Colorado's going to march through Edmonton, although Edmonton has a powerful offense, so we'll see what happens there. And the Celtics beat the Warriors Game 1. I didn't watch much of it. I'm not staying up late to watch it. So we'll see what happens when they come back east. But Celtics are a pretty good team. It might just be their time to overtake the Warriors. So see what happens there. But overall, I'm excited for the fight night, and I'm excited for Hell in a Cell for WWE on Sunday because I think Cody Rhodes is doing masterful work, and he's worth watching on his own. Plus, Peacock is free for me, so why not watch it? But same thing with NXT. Looking forward to anything NXT with Braun Breaker and co. I think NXT is the best wrestling show on television, better than Raw, SmackDown, Dynamite, and Rampage. That's my opinion. This has all been my opinion. And we'll see you next time in the Corner Arcade.